Om Sthapakaya cha dharmasya sarvadharmaswarupine avatara varisthaya Ramakrishnaya te namah. Sruti smriti purananam alayam karunalayam namami bhagavat padam shankaram loka shankaram shankaram shankaracharyam keshavam badarayanam sutra bhashya krito vande bhagavantu punah punah. So happy to see you again after a short interval because I was traveling outside California. So now we are continuing a discussion. Right now, I think we are discussing this previous, that is Tanishthasya Moksha Upadesha. That's what we are discussing. We are about to conclude that sutra. And the immediate context should be kept in mind. It was already stated at the end of the previous sutra Bhashya, that is Adauchyade Achetane api pradhane bhavadi atma shabda. So actually this is a Sankhya Purva Paksha that should be kept in mind when we are studying this Siddhanta Paksha. That is Shankaracharya is taking up each one of these objections of Purva Pakshas and answering them one after another. So the Sankhyas are telling us that this Atma Shabda can be used not only with regard to Sachetana, that is Chetana, that is Atman, Sachetana, but also in Achetana, that is Pradhana. So that's what they are saying. They say, and you know what's the context here? Gaunaschet na Atma Shabdad. That's a previous sutra, that's the background for this statement. So Bhashyakara made it very clear that because the word Atma Shabda is found in this, that is Anena Jivena Atmana Anupravishya. So Anupravesha is mentioned here in the Chandogya text, that is in the Tattwamasi Mahavakya Prakarana in the 6th chapter. So Anena Jivena Atmana Anupravishya. Nama Rupe Vyakaravani, that is the context. So this Sat as Atman, a Jivatma, it does Anupravesha. Anupravesha means it gets itself identified with this Sharira, Mana, Buddhi, etc. And then the Jiva begins to see everything Nama Rupe Vyakaravani. So the normal way of explaining is this phenomenon of coming to waking state from Sushupti state. In Sushupti state, there is Nama Rupa. So when we wake up, what is happening is, again, the Atman begins to manifest. It's already there, but it's not manifesting in the Antakarana, the way it does in waking state and dream state. So again, we start seeing all the Nama Rupa Prapancha. The Srishti begins. So because the word Atma Shabda is used, the word Atman is used in the Sudhi. Shabda here means Shabda Pramane, means Sudhi Vakyeshu, means Vedanta Vakyeshu. So the word Atma Shabda is used, Jivena Atmana Anupravishya. So the Atma Shabda is used. Therefore, it is not Amukhya, it is not Gauna. So if you argue that it is used in the Gauna sense, which means Pradhana also can be considered to be Jagat Karanam, because by Atma Shabda, Pradhana is indicated in a Gauna sense. So by the word Atma Shabda, by the Pradhana is indicated, then Bhashyakara will tell you, no, actually Atma Shabda means, in Mukhyartha, Atma Shabda means the Sachetanam or Chetanam. That's the idea behind Atman, always is associated with Chaitanya. And Pradhana is always associated with Achetanatum, with Jadatum. So Jada Pradhana cannot be the actual meaning or implication of the word Sat. Sadeva Saumya idam Griyasi, it all should be kept in mind. And also that comes all the way right up to the Mahavakya. So Atmaiva, that is Tattwamasi Shetaketu. So Atma Tattwamasi Shetaketu. So Atma means that Sat is your own Atma. That is you yourself. So this is Uddalaga's instruction to Swetaketu. That Tattwamasi Mahavakya should be kept in mind in this context. So this is the sixth sutra, Gaunaschet na Atma Shabdat. That is, if you argue that it is used, the Sat is used in a Gauna sense, that means Amukhyartham, it means metaphorical sense, secondary sense, then it is not correct, because by the word Atma Shabda, what the Sudi is indicating is Prapanchakaranatvam, and Atma is always Sachetanam or Chetanam. It is not Achetanam. Pradhana is Achetanam, therefore Pradhana cannot be the actual implication of the word Sat here. This is the argument. Now, in that context, later after some arguments, the Sankhyas, they going around, they're coming up with many arguments. They say, Atha Uchyadi Achetane Abhi Pradhane Bhavadi Atma Shabda. So Atma Shabda can be used in the context of, with regard to Achetana, Jada, Pradhana also. That's the argument. And then they're going on arguing, different arguments are put forward. And right now we are dealing with an important statement here. In the Bhashyagara's answer, he gave this example of Golangula Nyaya. It means if a spiritual seeker is trying to find out the true Swarupa, then if he thought that Pradhana is Swarupa, Jada is your Swarupa, Jada Pradhanam is your Swarupa, then it's like a very mischievous person trying to deceive a humble, innocent, blind man. He leads him to a volatile, a violent bull or cow, and puts his hand on the tail of this bull, which is very violent, and tells him, well, you hold on to this tail and you follow this bull and you'll reach a destination. He may not reach his destination, he may reach ICU. This will happen. So here, that's why you have to remember the previous statement, Siddha Dhanataya Antha Golangula Nyayena. Tadatmadrishtim na parityajet tadvidirtam cha atmanam na pratipadyeda tatha sadi purushartha vikanyeta anartham cha ruchet. So if you, like a Shvetaketu, a good man, a spiritual seeker, if you teach him, well, you are not Atman, you are Pradhana, you are Jada, it's like putting his hand, he's a blind man, let us say, putting his hand on the tail of a violent bull. What happens? So what happens, then Tadviriktam Atmanam na Paripadyeda. He will not realize his Atma Sarupa. Not only that, Purusharthat Vikanyeda. He will be moved away, he will be dragged away from his own Purushartha, Moksha. And Moksha is the central theme of the 6th chapter of Chandogya. Because when Shvetaketu, eventually in the 16th Khanda, in the 6th chapter of Chandogya, when Shvetaketu finally was convinced of the Mahavakya statement, Tattwamasi came from his own father, Uddalaga, then what happens? Then he realized, he fulfilled his own Sarupa. So what happens? He reaches moksha. So instead of reaching moksha, which is the real goal of this Mahavakya Upadesha, what happens? Purusharthat Vikanyeda. He will be dragged away, he will be diverted away from Purushartha. Purushartha means moksha. That's what happened to Shvetaketu. You look at the 16th Khanda of Chandogya. Finally, Shvetaketu realized his own Purushartha. That is how it concludes. That comes here in the Bhashya itself. As a conclusion, Shvetaketu got the moksha. You can see the last statement in the Chandogya Upanishad, 16th Khanda. So the end, finally, Shvetaketu realized, no, he got moksha. So instead of reaching that, if you teach him, if you teach a spiritual seeker, that you are pradhana, you are jada. What happens, instead of teaching him Tattwamasi, you're teaching him Tvam Jadosi, Achetanosi, you are Jada, you are Pradhana. He will be dragged away from his Purushartha. Such a statement. And then Bhashyagara says, Tasmat Yatha Surgadyarthino Agnihotradi Sadhanam Yatha Bhudam Upadishati. Tatha Mumukshuhu Api Satma Tattwamasi Shvetakedo Iti Yatha Bhudameva Atmanam Upadishati Yuktam. So, what is the most plausible logical conclusion that we can reach? The argument is this. Tasma yatha surga archina. So, the Mimamsa tradition, in the Bhatta and Prabhagara traditions of Mimamsa, according to Jaimini Sutra, you perform yajnas and yagas when you want to go to Surga. Surga Gamo Yajeda. You should perform yajna, yaga, yajana kriya. If you are a Surgarthi, if you are an aspirant of Surga Prapti. So such a person will be given this instruction, that is Agnihotradi Sadhanam Upadishati. Such a person who is Surgarthi will be taught Agnihotradi Sadhanam. Agnihotra is the sadhanam, is the instrument, is the means for Surga Prapti. That's what will be taught. Like that, Tatha Mumukshuhu Abhi. So just like a Surgarthi is taught to perform yajna and yaga, to fulfill his desire to attain Surga Prapti. Similarly, Mumukshu, somebody who wants moksha, he'll be taught Satma Tattwamasi Chetakedo Iti. He'll be taught this Tattum Asi. That Atma is you yourself, that's your own true nature. Idi yadha bhudameva atmanam upadishati iti yuktam. So this is the most logical conclusion. We've already discussed briefly, but I'm just making it further clear from previous section. So, evam cha sati tapta parasu grahana moksha drishtandena satyabhisandhasya mokshopadesha upapadyati. So that tapta parasugrahana nyaya I've already mentioned. I read the Bhashya also from Chandogya. That is a person who is suspected of having committed theft. He will be asked to touch a hot piece of iron, cast iron, and then if he doesn't burn his fingers, then it's a proof that he is innocent. If he burns his fingers, then it will show that he has really committed the crime of stealing. So already we discussed. I'm going to repeat this again because more important things has been discussed in today's session. So Satyabhisantasya. Satyabhisanta means somebody who is oriented towards Satya, who is convinced of Satya. Mokshopadesha Upapadyati. So such a moksharthi should be given mokshopadesha. Just like Surgarthi is given Agnihotradi Upadesha. So moksharthi should be given this mokshopadesha, Tattwamasi Mahavakya. Anyatha, he amukhe Sudatma Tattvopadeshe ahamuktam asmi idi vidyat idi what sampat matramidam anityabalam siyat. So it's again a reference to a particular kind of upasana structure it's already mentioned in the Chatussutri Bhashya very elaborately, the different kinds of upasana already mentioned. It's called Sambadhyanam. So when you deliberately superimpose on something, for example, you superimpose Brahma Sankalpa in Jiva, what happens is that will give you some result, some amrutatvam result will be there. So what you superimpose something on something else. So what happens is you get some result, but the result will be temporary. It is anityabalam. In some yajnas and yagas, you can find in some of our own rituals, they may offer a gold coin. That same gold coin will be repeated in every ritual, differently. When we utter the mantra, the gold coin will be a symbolic representation of Hasti, Hiranyam, Asti uh, in the more elaborate Vedic rituals. Just for example, a coin or something is offered as a metaphor, as an upachara, superimposing on that coin something much higher, and then you get the result. But that result will be anityam. Similarly, this also used as an upasana kriya. So it is mentioned here, aham uktam asmi iti vidyat. So here it is prana upasana is indicated here in the that is also one of the upasanas mentioned in Chandogya, Brihadaranyaka, etc. Uktam, literally, it implies some kind of a mantra which is not uttered loudly. So, Vaidika mantram, apragita mantra sadhyani stotrani, already mentioned this. This Ayana's commentary, actually, it is mentioned in other Aitareya, Aranyaka, etc. But in this Rigveda Samhita, the first mandala, there is a description of this Uktam. It means Vaidika mantra, as in Apragita, which is not very elaborately, loudly sung like other mantras. So, and while doing this mantra, you slowly do Sankalpa, Aham Pranaha Asmi. So, Pranopasana. Like the Aham Uktam Asmi. Now, it is called Sambat Upasana. Sankalpa is very important here. Idivar Sambat Matramidam Anityabalam Siyat. So, instead of actually believing that I am the Atman, Shvetaketu is asked to believe that is Atma. Tat Tum Asi Tum Tat Asi. It is not Sambat Upasana. It is real conviction. Why? Because Shvetaketu is Sadhana Dushta Sampanna. And he himself had to go through 8 previous repetitions. Navama Krutva, 9 times repeated, but first time Upadesha, then 8 times repetition of the same Upadesha with 8 different Drishtantas. That's how it proceeds in the Chandogya Upanishad. So Shvetaketu was not fully convinced when he first heard Tattwamasi. But when he had to hear again and again, it went deep into him. So finally, at the 9th time when he heard, he was fully convinced. That phalam leads to moksha. And it is nitya phalam, not anitya phalam. But sampadupasana phalam is anitya phalam. So if you if actually Bhashyakara is countering the Sankya's argument, if it is some kind of a upasana, like first you consider as a pradhana, and then you later on you realize it is Atma. So when you get this instruction, that instruction itself is like Aham Uktam Asmi, some kind of a Sambadupasana, then it will not lead to moksha. It will only lead to anitya phalam. Bhashyakara Idiva Sambat Matramidam anitya phalam siya tatra moksho padeshu na uvaddhiti. Moksha is nitya. So, Sambat Upasana Phalam is Anitya. So, if we reduce the Tattwamasi Mahavakya Upadesha is kind of an Upasana, Sambat Upasana, then it will not produce Nitya Bhara Moksha. Tatra mokshopadesho na uvadyadi. Tasmanna sadanimani atma shabdasya gaunatvam. Therefore, there is absolutely no question of considering this atma being used as gauna, as a metaphor. It is mukhyartha only. That's the idea behind. Okay. So these are all important points. Remember, there are the ukthapayati iti uktham. This is a kind of bhavana, imagination. So the Bhashyakara's argument is that Tattvamasi Mahavakya Upadesha is not Sambadhyana Upasana, not comparable to Sambadhyana Upasana, like Prana Upasana, etc., because it produces Nitya Bhalam. A result is permanent, the result is moksha. That's the idea behind. And now again, Bhashyakara is countering a previous argument. So you have to remember, it takes a little effort on our part. Because first, the Purvapakshi, one after another, put forward his own arguments. We may think that he is also correct. Sankhyas are very powerful in their logical focus. So they look they sound very convincing, the arguments. So first there is a long discourse, list of objection from Sankhya's. And then Bhashyakara begins his refutation of those arguments. The refutation continues. So this is over. That is Sat being used as Atma Shabda is not Gauna, it is Mukhya. That is very clear. Now next. Bhrutyetu Swami Bhrutya Bhedasya Pratyakshatvat Upavanno Gauna Atma Shabdu Mama Atma Bhadrasena Iti. That also is a refutation of a previous argument that came from Sankhya's. Sankhya's argued that a king may consider his loyal minister or his bhrutya, a servant. He is myself. Mama Atma Bhadrasenaha Mama Atma. But here there is one great difference. Swami Bhrutya Bhedasya Pratyakshatvat. Say, suppose your friend calls you are a tiger. Your friend doesn't really think you are a tiger. He knows you are not a tiger. The tiger's characteristics are superimposed on you. So the difference between the tiger and the person who is called a tiger or a lion, say, Simho Manavaha, means a brahmachari or anyone is like is a lion. A human being is not a lion, but he may be called a lion. It's only a metaphor in the Gauna sense. But the important point is, here the person who calls him a tiger or a lion knows that he's a human being. Yes, the characteristics, the strength, the courage, all this bravery, all these qualities may be there. So he may be called a lion or a tiger. But your friend doesn't really consider you're a tiger. You're living in the forest. You're a human being. So, Bhrutyetu, Swami Bhrutya Bhedasya. So again, it's a reference to the previous argument that was put forward by Sankhyas, who argued that just like a king calls his servant, he's Mama Atma, he's myself. Similarly, well, this Pradhana also can be called Atma, like that, you know? Or it could be the other way around. Bhashyakara says that analogy, that comparison doesn't hold because it's not logical. Why? Because the distinction, the difference between Pradhana and Atma is not clear. But the difference between a king and his servant is very clear. The king really doesn't think that his servant is his Atman, his self. He won't allow him to come and sit on the throne. But then the distinction is very clear, explicit. Still, we may call him, he is myself. So the difference is very, very clear. Pratyakshatva. So Swami Vritya Bhedasya Pratyakshatvat Upapanno Gauna Atma Shabdo Mama Atma Bhadrasena Iti. So that is okay in the Gauna sense, but not Mukhyartha. Abhicha Kojit Gaunaga Shabdo Drishta Iti Na Yadavada Shabda Pramanage Arthe Gauni Kalpana Nyaya. No Nyaya, that is the Nwaya. Sarvatra Anashwasa Prasangat. Because in one context, you may have used this Gaunartha. That doesn't mean that it is logical to use it in every single context. I mean, taking Gaunartha, so it should be under Gauna Mukhya. Gauna means Amukhya. Amukhya means secondary. It's a metaphor, not the real sense. Mukhya means actual. So, taking Gaunartha everywhere is not acceptable. And there is a reason given here. Later, Anegarthatusya Anyayitva. That argument comes later. That is, if you want to use a word in one context Gaunartha, in another context Mukhyartha, that is acceptable. You can find in the Arindhati Pradarshana Nyaya, which is going to discuss Hedva Vachana. That next sutra will discuss that. But in this context, the point is this: just because in one context Gaunartha is okay, Mama Bhadrasena Mama Atma, that statement is okay in the Gauna sense. It doesn't mean that the Gaunatvam is applicable everywhere. It is not applicable everywhere. That means the real meaning of Atma is Atma as Mukhyartha, not Gaunartha. It is not used as Gaunartha for Pradhana. That is the argument from Bhashyam. Sarvatra Anashwasa Prasangat. So a single word cannot have a number of Mukhyartha in the same context. A single word cannot have any number of Mukhyarthas. There can be Gaunartha, but there cannot be any number of Mukhyartha, because that will lead to some kind of a hermeneutical anarchy. I mean, some kind of total chaos in in the science of scripture interpretation. That discussion continues here. The topic of Atma Shabda is continued here. Yattu uktam chetana chetanayoho sadharana Atma Shabda kradu jwalanayoriva jyoti Shabda iti. Again, it was used, Jyoti, the same word Jyoti can be used to mean Agni and also Yaga or Yajna. That is the argument here. I mean, so I think that we already discussed, but I would like to mention that the example is taken from the traditional statements found in different literature related to Brahmana, related to other Vedangas, where the correct time and procedure of different yajnas and yagas are described. So, for example, Vasante Jyodisha Yajeda. It's a Vedic statement related to Jyodishtama Yajna or Yaga. So it is very important before you actually begin any preparation for any Vedic ritual. Kala Nirnaya is very important. What's the time? So yeah, it should be certain yajnas and yagas should be done on only specific occasions. So Vasante Jyodisha Yajeda. It's a Vedic statement. You should perform Jyodishtama Yajna in Vasanta Rutu, spring season. Now, what's the meaning of Jyodisha here? Because same Jyoti can be used in one context as Arthavada, in another context as Mukhyartha. So that's an important point here. So you have to remember the Sankhya argument. The Sankhyas argued that the word Jyoti is used both for Agni, and also for Agni Jwalana Kriya in Yajnas and Yagas. Like that, the same Atma Shabda can be used for Chetana and Achetana both. Such Sankya's argument. So Bhashyakara is going to tell you that Drishtanta, that example is defective. It is not proper. And he explains this. So the background is this: Vasande Jyodisha Yajeda. Here Jyoti means Agni, but here in this particular context, Vasande Jyodisha Yajeda. Here Jyoti means Jyodishtoma Yaga. Because Yaga is Artha, it's only Gavana, it is not Mukhyartha. Mukhyartha is Jalana Kriya. Mukhyartha is Agni. But in this context, it is Gavana. It is Arthavada. Jyodhistoma Asya. It is Jyodhishtoma. So Stoma here means Rigveda mantras. So yeah, that means Yaga in which Stoma mantras are used, they reveal everything, the true meaning of the reality, like Agni. Therefore, in this particular context of using Jyoti to mean Yaga in Agnishtoma is Arthavada. Arthavada means metaphor, as in extolling, praising. It is secondary sense, not primary sense. The primary sense, Jyoti means Agni. In the Arthavada sense, it means Yaga. So that comparison is okay in the context of Jyoti, but that comparison doesn't apply. It is not proper. It is adrishtanta. That's Bhashyakara's conclusion. It is not a proper drishtanta. It's not a proper example to argue that the same Atma Shabda may be used for both Chedana, Atman, and also Achedana, Pradhana. I hope it's clear to you. You got it out? Do you want it? If you have any doubt, you can ask. That's a different matter. So, any doubts?
No, Maharaj.
No, okay, very good. Yatuktam Chetana Achetana Yoga Sadharana Shabda Kratu Jaranayoriva Yodi Shabda iti. Kratu means Yajna Yaga, Yodhishtama in this context. So, the Sankhyas are arguing Yatuktam Chetana Achetana Yoga Sadharana Atma Shabda means using for both. Atma Shabda Kratu Jaranayoho. Kratu means Yajna Yaga, etc. Jarana means Agni. Jyoti Shabda iti tad na. That's not okay. Why? Anegarthatusya anyayitvat. That means you cannot have two mukhyartha to mean in the same context in relation to the same word. You cannot have more than one mukhyartha in the same context, in the same. So, of course, there is a very important point, remember. This is related to Vedic hermeneutics. Bhashyakara will explain later, Whenever you try to understand the meaning of a particular word in the Vedic literature, first of all, you should know the context. And also you should know the Upapada. Upapada means a word that comes close by. That is true in modern language also. Suppose you are giving a talk on a specific topic and you are giving like a series of arguments. You don't suddenly bring something totally alien to the context. Because if you don't clear a different context, the word may be misunderstood. So, Pativinyogam asya annena arthena bhavidavyam. That is an important point in Vedic hermeneutics. So, pravaktuhu abhipraya vashat anyuttamabhi bhajidhi mantraha nahi edeshu arthasya yattavadharanam asti mahartha idi ete dusparikyanacha yatha ashwaryoga vaishishtya Asyaroha Vaisistya Ashyu Sadhya Sadhudarascha Vakati. Evam Ete Mantraha Vaktru Vaisistyat Sadhun Sadhudarancha Arthan Sravandi. Is in Nirukta Bhashya. Durgacharya's comment. What it means is this. The meaning of a word can vary depending upon the context, and context means the specific context. Prakaranam, Bhashikara used the word prakaranam here, and also the person he uses. That is general principle. So that's an important point, remember. So when you use one word, for example, Jyoti, to understand its real implication in the particular context, you should know the context, and also you should also know the words which come close by, before and after. Sandarbha or context of prakaranam it is called. So that is an important point, remember. Tat na anegarthasya anegarthatusya anyayatva. That means same word cannot have any number of mukhyarthas. This idea behind. Jyoti Shabda can have the sense, the implication, Jyotishtoma or Yajna Yaga as Arthavada, Amukhyartha, Gaunartha, but his Mukhyartha is always Agni. But you cannot say that in the same context it can have two Mukhyarthas. If there are two meanings, one should be Mukhyartha, the other should be Gaunartha, metaphorical, secondary. Tasmat Chetana Vishya Eva Mukhyatma Shabdaha. Therefore, in this context, Chetana Vishya Eva Mukhya Atma Shabdaha. Why? Because Sadeva Saumi the Agreyasi, that's the beginning of the context. And then is also mentioned again and again, the word Atma is used. Sa Atma Tattumasi Shvetaketu. Jivena Atmana Anupravishya. Sa Jivena Atmana Anupravishya. So means Sat. Sadeva Samidam Agreyasi, the same Sat. That Sat is implied here. Satma Tattvamasi Shetakedu, the same Sat. So, and Sat always means what? Chetana, Atma Shabda. Not Achetanam Pradhanam. That's the idea behind. So, Tasmat Chetana Visheva Mukhya Atma Shabdaha. Chetana tu Upacharad Bhudadishu Prayujyati. So, Upacharad here means, after all, everything in this world is linked to Chaitanyam. Nothing in this world is revealed, manifest without Chaitanyam. An object itself may not be Sachetanam, but it manifests because of Chaitanya. So that's an important point to remember. Everything in this world by itself may be called, for example, Sharira, Mana, Buddhi, Ahankara, Mahattattva, all these are different evolutions of the same Pradhana. By themselves, these things are Jada, because Pradhana itself is Jada. And everything in this world is an evolute of the same Jada. But everything manifests, is revealed because of Chaitanya. Just like, for example, you see an object because there is light. It's light that reveals an object in front of you. Without the light, it doesn't manifest for you. So, like that, everything in this world, in an upachara sense, can be called Chetana. That's why, Bhudadishu Prayujyati Bhudatma Indriyatma Iti. So that's important. That's again, it's a reference to previous argument. Bhudatma Indriyatma. You already mentioned here. We already discussed that earlier. These are all different arguments that came from Sankhyas. So Bhashyakara is taking one after another all these arguments and refuting them. I mean, this Bhuda's 5 elements, Atman. And these 5 senses are, all these are mentioned. But the senses and the Panchamahabhutas themselves are evolutes of Pradhanam, which is Achetanam. But then they manifest because there is Chaitanyam. Everything is a superimposition on Chaitanyam. In that, there is Upacharat, Upachari, it's mentioned here. Sadharanatvepi Atmasabdasya na pragaranam upapadam va kinchit nischayagam andarena anyatara vrittida nirdharayidam shakyade. Again, I mentioned this just now. Sadharanatve api, that is, normally when you use the word, the same context, in a common context, when you try to understand the word of meaning of a word, the prakaranam, context, and upapadam. Upapadam means a word I mentioned earlier, some words which come very close by, or in the context of certain words, another word is used. So that word used may have something to do with the words which are used in the same sentence or in the same context. That is upapadam. Kinjit nischayaka mandarena anyatara vrittida nirdharayidam shakyade. So you cannot decide the meaning of word without looking for the context in which used, and also the related words which are occurring in the same context, in the same place. Nacha atra achetanasya nischayagam kinjit karanamasti. So, nacha atra achetanasya nischayagam kinchit. So remember, anena jivena atmana anupravishya, that is mentioned here. This atma is doing anupravesha. Anupravesha in sharira, antakarana, etc. Then only the jiva begins to manifest. So jivena atmana anupravesha nama rupe vyakaravani. That particular mantra should be kept in mind. So related to Chandrika Upanishad. Anena jivena atmana anupravishya nama rupe vyakaravani. So this Chaitanyam, this Atma, it is doing anupravesha in the antakarana, the sarira, mana, buddhi, chitta, hangara, all this. That's how we begin to see different things in this world. Nama rupa. We are creating nama rupa. So vyakaravani, we are creating nama rupa. You know. So when you open our eyes from Sushupti, Jagat context is normally used to explain this. When you wake up, again the Atman, Chaitanyam, begins to manifest as Aham Sphiranam. At that time, we get this, but Aham must be. And immediately, our Panchajnanendriyas, Panchakarmendriyas begin to function. Antakarana, Mana, Buddhi, Chitta, Ahangara begin to function. And then we begin to see all these different empirical Nama, Rupa, Prapancha. So Nama, Rupa, Prapancha we create. The Srishti is taking place because the Chaitanyam Atma is doing anupravesha and begins to manifest through these antakaranas, mana, buddhi, chitta, hangara. Then panchajnanendriyas, karmendriyas begin to become active. Then we begin to experience all the nama, rupa, prapancha, empirical phenomena. That's how Srishti begins. Now, remember, this Sachetana or Chaitanyam Atma is doing anupravesha in something which is not Sachetana. Let's remember. Chaitanyam cannot do anupravesha in something which is also Chaitanyam. So anupravesha takes place in the mana, buddhi, chitta, ahangara, which remain jada. Again, this should be understood in the context of waking up from sushupti. That's a normal way of explaining this. When you wake up in the morning, when we come back from sushupti to waking state, what is happening is, again, we are creating this Nama Rupa Prapancha. If you read Mandukya Upanishad, Mandukya Karika, Gaudavada Karika, I have got about 144 lectures on the Mandukya Upanishad and Mandukya Karika, and about a number of classes, 50, 60 classes on the Mandukya Upanishad, Gaudavada Karika Bhashyam. Later I had to discontinue because I was alone here at the time. So very easy to understand. So when we wake up, we are returning from Sushupti. There is no Srishti. And then when we wake up, suddenly we identify ourselves as Atman, because the Chaitanyam begins to manifest as Aham Spiranam. Immediately we begin to see things, hear things, smell things, taste things, and all the five senses and Pancha Karmendriyas begin to function, and the Namarupe Vyakaravani. So this comes in the Chandogya. You can read the Upanishads later. Now, Nitya Atra Acetanasya Nischayagam Kinjit Karanamasti. So there is no reason to think or to imagine that this is possible in Achetana. Prakritam tu sadikshitra. Prakritam. So what is Prakritam? Sadeva Saumidam Agre Asit. That is Prakritam. That is the context. So Bhashyakara said, Na prakaranam upapadam va kinchit nischayagam andarena anyatara vruttida nirdharaidam shakyade. That's the early statement. Without considering the prakaranam, the context, the overall context where a word is used, and also the words that occur nearby, upapadam. Without considering them, we cannot come to a conclusion, it's actual implication of a word. And here, what is the context? The context is this. Prakritam sadeva saumidam agre asit. So this ikshita is sat, is ikshita. And that sat is your own atma. Sa atma tattvamasi shetaketo. That is the Upadesha comes 9 times in the Chandogya Upanishad. So that is the context. To ikshita, ikshitra. Sannihitascha chetanaka shvetaketu. So who is present there? Shvetaketu. And who is Shvetaketu? Shvetaketu is Chetana. Shvetaketu is a person there who is sadhana sadushta sampannaha, who has a lot of shraddha, who asks his father for instruction, and the father instructs him. That's how the whole Upanishad proceeds in the Chandogya Upanishad, 16th chapter. So here, the context is Sadeva Saumidam Agre Asit. The Sat itself is Sachetana Atma. That is the Ikshida. Tadaikshad. Tad here also means the same Sat. Tadaikshad, etc. Saesham Chakre, that same thing. Sannihidasya Chedanaka Shvetaketu. Nahi Chedanasya Shvetaketu Achetana Atma Sambhavadi iti avochama. We already said earlier. Nahi Chedanasya Shvetaketu Atma Achetana Atma Sambhavati iti avochama. So the Shvetaketu is Sachetana, and he has been doing Sadhana Yushta Sambhati, and the Sravanavarti is continuing. That is a Prasankhya school. By Diksha and others, the Parimala Padhari is called Sravanavarti, is very important. So here, Shvetaketu had to listen to the same Tattvamasi Mahavakya again and again. So he's Chetana. And then, Nahi Chetanasya Shvetaketu Achetana Atma Sambhaditi Avajama Tasmat Chetana Vishaiha Atma Shabdha. So we cannot ever say, it's not ever possible that the same Shvetaketu and his Atma is Jata, Pradhana, it is impossible. So again, this is very important to understand the true meaning of Atma Shabda, whether it is Jada Pradhana or Sachetana or Chedana Atma. We have to understand the context. The context is Sadeva Saumidam Agre Asit, and also the words used in different contexts, same Sandarbha, the same Prakarana, Prakarana. So the whole context is a context related to Atma Shabda, Sachetanam, Atma Shabda. Therefore, tasmat chetana vishekha means that is something that is linked to it is the embodiment of chaitanyam. Iha atma shabdaha. Iti nisyate. Therefore, here atma shabda implies chaitanyam or chetanam, not achetanam, not jada pradhanam, etc. Iti nisyate. Jyoti shabdo bhi laukikena prayogena jvalane eva rudhaga arthavada kalpitena tu jvalana sadrishyena kradau pravutta iti adrishtantah. So I already mentioned this, explained earlier. The very drishtanta example of Jyotish Shabda. The Sankhyas argue that Jyotish Shabda can be used, is normally used to mean both Kradu, Yaga, and the Aptishtoma, and also Agni. So Bhashyam is not possible because there is idea mentioned here. Kradu is in the Arthavada sense, and Jvalana Agni is in the Mukhya Artha. Arthavada is Gaunartha, Agni is Mukhya Artha. So Jyotishabdopi Laukikena Prayogena. Jvalani, that is flame, and flame maybe. Agni, that's the meaning. Eva Rudhartha means conventional meaning. But then Gaunartha Arthavada is Arthavada Kalpidena tu Jvalana Sadrishyena Kradau. Krada means Yajna Yaga, etc. I already explained this earlier, so no need to repeat again. I mentioned this. Vasandi, Jyotisha, Yajeda, etc. Vedic statements are there. With Yaga, in which Toma mantras reveal the phalam, the result of that particular ritual, like Agni reveals things, and that is called Agnistomam. So, Jyoti, Agni Mukhyartha, but here Jyoti means Jyotishtoma Yaga, and that is Arthavada Gaunartha. So, and it's not that they are used in both contexts as Mukhyartha. So, your Drishtanta itself is unacceptable, untenable. That's the conclusion. Adrishtanta. Those of you who are interested more, you can ask question later. Ukthyam, it's a Vikruti or variant of Soma Yajna, that's different ways of. There's 10 Vikrutis are there in the Vedic chanting, which is not within our context right now. Then there is another meaning is given here. That is the meaning of Atma is not Pradhanam, that is further emphasized in the next sentence. Athava Purva Sutra eva Atma Shabdam Nirasta Samasta Gaunattu Sadharanattu Shankataya Vyakhyaya Tataha Sontra eva Pradhana Karana Niragarana Chedu Vyakhyaya Tanishthasya Mokshopadeshad iti Tasmad na Achedanam Pradhanam Sachabdavanchim. So it means an independent argument that is that's given here. So another way of interpreting is given here. Athava means another way of interpreting the same sutra. In the 6th sutra itself, it's already proved the Atma Shabda cannot have a Mukhyartha, or it cannot have Sadharanatva, means it cannot be used to mean both Jada and Chetana, both for Pradhana and Atma. It cannot be used. Atma Shabda cannot be used to imply both Chetana and Achetana. And it cannot be used in the Mukhya-artha, Gaunartha. It is already well established in the 6th Sutra. Purva Sutra eva Atma Shabdam Nirasta Samasta Gaunatva Sadharanatva Shankataya Vyakhyaya. It's already Nirasta, it's already it cannot be possible. In no way can it be used as a Mukhyartha or it cannot be used to mean both Jada and Chedana, this Atma Shabda. Now, there is another possible reason that Pradhana is not Jagat Karanam. Prove this another independent reason or argument is given here in the next sutra. What is that? The next sutra means we already discussed Tannishthasya Moshopadesha in the sense. Tannishthasya. Tattwamasi Mahavakya I mentioned here. Tannin Sannistha means Atmajnanapatti. When you get established in this Sannistha, Atmanistha, then that will lead to moksha. That Upadesha is there. Tataha Sudantra eva Pradhana Karana Niragarana Heduhu Vyakheya. So it's never possible. Pradhana can never be Jagat Karanam. For that, another argument is put forward. What is that argument? Is Tanishthasya Mokshopadeshat. Because those who get established, those who have Nishtha in Tattwamasi, that Tat, Sat, Atmanistha, that will lead them to moksha, that is promised, that is Upadesha is there. Itasmat na chedanam pradhanam sachabda vakyam. Therefore, such shabda can never mean achetanam, pradhanam, prakriti or anything. That idea is putting forward. Another independent argument is for refuting Jagkaranatum. So that's again coming here. That is the next sutra comes here, you know. Kudascha na pradhanam sachabdavakyam. So another argument is put forward here to show that sabshabda doesn't ever mean pradhanam. Heyattu avachanat cha. So that's the next argument. Heyattu avachanat. Yadi anatmaiva pradhanam sachabdavakyam sa atma tattvamasi iti ika vadishtam syat. Sa tadupadesha sravanat anatmakyadaya tannishto ma bhuditi mukhyam atmanu upadidikshukhu tasya heyattum bruyat yatha arundhadim didarsayishuku samibastham sthulam taram amukhyam pradhamam arundhadidi grahayitva tam pratyakhyaya paschat arundhadim eva grahayidi. So Arundhati Pradarshana Nyayaha. It is called Arundhati Darshan Nyayaha, Arundhati Pradarshana Nyayaha. That should be discussed first here. So first, what is this about? So it is a Nyaya maxim. So maybe it's part of the Shodasha Samskaras, you know, these bridegroom or maybe priest showing bride or bridegroom is Arundhati Nakshatra. But that is not our context. But the important point to remember is there are two stars. One is Vasishtha, the other is Arundhati Nakshatra, means stars. So the brighter, the bigger Nakshatra is Vasishtha. And the smaller, fainter, not easy to see, that is Arundhati. So when the purpose is to show the person Arundhati Nakshatra. But it is very small, very faint. Though, of course, you know, this, the way Shankaracharya uses, you know, he uses this in two different contexts. He uses here and also in his Bhashyam on 12th Sutra also he uses. And the Abhyasad. There it comes in the Anandamaya Abhyasa. There it comes, the Arundhati Nakshatra description. Again it comes. The implication is simple. There are two stars. One is Vasishtha, the other is Arundhati. The purpose is to show Arundhati. But there are two stages. First, the priest or whoever may be is trying to show you Arundhati Nakshatra. He doesn't directly, he cannot directly show you Arundhati Nakshatra because it's very small, very faint, difficult to spot on the sky. So, but there's a bigger star. And that is shown first. Look at this big star. It's easy to see. Very big star, very bright. And then after you're fully focused on the big star, then the person who wants to show you Arundhati Nakshatra, ask you, leave that, drop that, reject that, and change your focus to a faint star which is close by. But you cannot directly see Arundhati Nakshatra. Because you have to see first the bigger nakshatra, the big, brighter nakshatra, and then only you can see the other one. You can directly focus on the Arundhati Nakshatra. Similarly, Bhashyam says, suppose Pradhanam means Atma. Then after this instruction, the Sruti itself would have told the spiritual seeker, look here, this is not Arundhati, this is not real Atman. Atman is something else. So there is a change of focus, a shifting of focus from Vasishtha Nakshatra to Arundhati Nakshatra. So suppose in this context, the Sat Shabda means Pradhana, as Sankhyas are arguing. Let's say, take for argument's sake, Sankhyas are correct. Here Sat means Pradhana. Even then, seeing that it cannot be the real focus, the real purpose, that should not be the goal of the person. The person should be asked to turn his focus away from Pradhana and should be asked to turn his attention to Arundhati, the Atma nearby. That is not found there. Heyattu avajanat. That is not found here. So, yatha Arundhati nidarsane Bhakvishu Tarasu Amukyasu Arundhadishu Darsidasu Ya Andya Pradashyade Sa Mukhya Eva Arundhati Bhavati Evam Ikabi Anandamayasya Sarvandratva Mukhyam Atmadattum. Of course, this is a statement from another Adhikaranam, another sutra. But it's very clearly stated in the same Brahma Sutra Bhashyam. Suppose the person is trying to teach the student the means, the way to attain moksha, but at the very beginning, instead of talking about Atma, he is teaching him Pradhana, and later should have told the student, well, the Pradhana is not what you are looking for, that should not be your focus. Now you should leave that behind and you should focus on Atman. Just like the person is told, the person who is shown Arundhati Nakshatra is told that he should drop Vasishtha behind and should turn his focus on Arundhati. But that statement is not found in this Suti, in the Upanishads. So that is another reason why the actual meaning of Sat is Atma, not Pradhanam. That is the essence of this particular sutra. Say, Heyattu Avachanat. Heyattum, that Pradhana should be dropped. Pradhana is not the real purpose, not the real goal. Atma is the real goal. That statement doesn't occur anywhere in the Vedic statement. That is another reason why we have to admit, we have to believe that actual meaning of Sat Shabda is Atma only and not Pradhanam. That is the argument. It's a very short sutra. Heyattu avachanacha. Yadi anatma iva pradhanam Sat Shabda vakyam. Suppose in this particular Vedic statement, Sa Atma, Tattwamasi, these are the Vedic statements. That is Atman, that Tattwamasi, you are that. In this statement, is Sabshabda Vakya, the meaning of Sat Shabda is Pradhanam, Jada. In that context, Tad Upadesha Sravana Anatmakyadaya Tanishto Ma Bhuridi. So any teacher will be compassionate enough to make sure that the student is not misled. So after listening to this, Anatmakyadaya Tanishto Ma Bhut. After listening to this, the student may have this nishtha. The pradhanam is my true nature. That should not happen because that will be a disaster for any spiritual seeker. So any teacher will naturally tell him, Mukhyam Atmana Ubadidikshuhu. He will ask him to drop the pradhana behind, to reject it later, and then turn your attention to Atman. But such a statement is not found in the Vedanta Vakyas. Heyatva avachana. There is no vachanam. Heyatva means it should be rejected, that statement. Tasya heyatvam bruyat. So, pradhanasya heyatvam bruyat. So, any teacher should have told the student that pradhana should be left behind, it will be rejected. Now you should turn your attention to Atma. That's naturally you should have told. Yatha arundhadim didarsa ishuku. Ta samipastham sthulam taram amukhyam prathamam arundhati iti grahayitva. So what does he do? Somebody who wants to show you Arundhati Nakshatra. Ta samipastham sthulam taram amukhyam. There is a big bright star nearby. That is Thula means much bigger than Arundhati, and that is easily visible. So you should be shown something that is easily visible. It is big and brighter. So Tara Mukhyam, that is not the real purpose. The real purpose is to see Arundhati. So after asking you to focus your attention on this Thula, on a big bright star, which is Amukhya, it is not your main focus. Prathamam Arundhatim Grahayitva. This is Arundhati. He may tell you first. Tam Pratyakhyaya. Later, Tam Pratyakhyaya. Later you reject that. Then you tell the person, well, that is not Arundhati. That is Vasishtha Nakshatra. Now you turn your attention to the nearby small faint star. Paschat Arundhati meva grahayati. Then later you get the person to focus on Arundhati Nakshatra, which is nearby. Tadvat na ayam atma iti bruyat na chaivam avochit. So naturally like that, any teacher would tell you this is not Atma, this is only Pradhanam. Just like saying this is not Arundhati, this is only the big bright star, which is Vasishtha Nakshatra. Such a statement is not found in the Vedic literature. Na chaivam avochit. Sanmatratma avagadi nishtha eva hi sashtha prapadhaga parisamapti drishyate. So here is a very, very important statement to be kept in mind. Sanmatratma avagatihi. That nishtha. Nishtha in sanmatratma avagati. The conclusion of the Chandogya, the Shashtha Prapathaga is, what is that? Sanmatratma avagati. The realization of the fact that this Sat is my own Atman, my own Surupa, that avagati, that realization, that experience, and nishtha in that experience, that vibhuti, that is the conclusion, that is the That is found in the conclusion of the Sashta Prapataka, the conclusion of the Sashta Prapataka, 6th chapter. So you can see this uh, in this context. We can see the in the Chandogya Upanishad, you find that Sayatha Tatra Adahyeda Aidadatmimidam Sarvam Sa Atma Tattvamasi Shedagyodo Idi Tatha Asya Vijajñau Iti. So this Vedaketu have a Satyabhisantha. He had Nishtha in that Atma Jnanam, the Atmasvarupa Avagati. What happens? And finally he realized, he experienced that his own true nature, the meaning of his statement. That is, Asya Tat Vijajñauha Iti. He finally realized. What is realized? Aidadatmimidam sarvam tasatyam satma tattvamasi Shvetaketu. This instruction from Dalaka. That Shvetaketu realized, and he got moksha. He realized the supreme truth. That is the parisamapti of Shashta Prapataka. That is what Bhashyara says here. And again it comes later. Bhashyara makes a statement here. Udattamadesha Udattamadesam aprakshu yena asudam sudam bhavadi amadam madam avijñātam vijñātam iti. So that's again statement is there. Shvetaketu yennu somya idam mahamana anuchanamani stabdhosi. So Shvetaketu returned from his Gurukula, but he was very proud and haughty after he studied all the four Vedas. After studying all the four Vedas and Shastras, he became a bit haughty and proud. People generally become very proud without studying anything. So Shvetaketu was maybe much better evolved than many of us, So Uddalaka found out that his son, instead of becoming humble, he had become stabdhosi, means yet without any respect. Udattam adesam aprakshya. So what happened? Then Uddalaka asked him this question. Where did you learn this? Yena sudam sudam bhavadi amadam madam avijñātam vijñātam iti. Did you learn that by knowing which everything becomes known, by hearing which everything becomes heard, by realizing the supreme truth? Then Shvetaketu, of course, he was shocked. Katham nu bhagavassa adesho bhavati. This is the context. Bhashyakara makes a statement here. Shabdaha pradikya virodha abhyuchaya pradashanarthaka satya sati api heyattu vachine pradikya virodha. What Bhashyakara says is a very important point, remember. In this context, Bhashyakara says, the ultimate purpose of the final goal of the entire 16th Khanda is to teach Shvetaketu that knowledge by knowing which everything becomes known. And also to understand the supreme Karana. When you understand the Karanam, Karya becomes known. When you understand the source, everything becomes known. So, the Bhashyakara says in another context, to read this statement here. Katham tarki idam loke idam karanam ayasya vikara idi. So what is the karana by knowing which every karya becomes known? So vajarampanam, bhagalampanam ityedat. Bhashyakara says, Yada sume ekena lokamanina suvarna pintena sarvam anya vigarjadam kataka mukuda keyuradi vijñātam syad. Yada sume ekena lokamanina sarvam lokamayam vijñātam syad, etc. Yada saumya ekena mrpndena tuja kumbhadi karanabhudena vijñādena sarvam anya Tat vigarajadam murmayam, murt vigarajadam vijnanam syat. So what was the ultimate purpose of teaching this Mahavakya Vichara, the particular context, 6th chapter? To teach Vedaketu that knowledge, the source of everything, which is the Karanam, the source of everything, by knowing which all karyas or effect, when you know the cause, all effects become known. When you understand the true nature of Mrit, all pots and pans made of Mrit become known. When you know the nature of that metal, then all that is made of the particular metal becomes known. So when you understand the Karana, the Karyam becomes known. Because Karya is, effect is only Vacharampanam Vigavaro Namadheyam Mrittiga Ityeva Satyam. Mrit or clay is the only reality. A pot, maybe a cup or a jar is made of clay, are different manifestations. Only Vacharampanam, Vagalampanam. Nama Rupa, where a particular form, another name comes. A jar has got one form and the name jar. A pot has one form, so name pot. Like that. But the clay, the mrit is the same. So if you know mrit or clay, then all that is made of clay or mrit becomes known. That is the purpose of teaching the Tattwamasi Mahavakya in the entire 16th Khanda. By knowing Pradhana, it's not possible. Pradhana is Jada. And Pradhana is the source of all that you find in this world. Pradhanam Mahattatvam, then Ahangaram, then from Satyahangara mind, Rajasyahangara, Jnanindriya, Karmendriya, Tamasyahangara, Pancha Tanmatras, then Pancha Mahabhutas. Everything in this world is an evolute of Pradhana. They're all Jada. Now, by knowing Pradhana, you don't know the nature of Purusha. Because Purusha is Chaitanya, is Sachetana. Purusha is Bhokta. Pradhana is Bhogya. So, by knowing Pradhana, you don't know anything. You don't come to know anything related to Purusha. Therefore, the meaning of such Shabda should be Atman. Because everything in this world is Atman only. Everything else is superimposed upon Atman. Atman is the source, like Mrit. Once you know Atman, everything else becomes known. So there's a pratikya, the premise. What is the premise? Daraga is telling Shvetaketu, I am going to teach you that. Did you learn that? By knowing which everything becomes known. That knowledge cannot be the knowledge of Pradhanam. It can only be the knowledge of Atman. Because if by knowing Pradhanam, you will know only different evolutes of Pradhanam. That is Bhogya Vastu. Things of this world, matter. Only that becomes known by knowing Pradhana. Because Chedanam or Purusha is not included among the evolutes of Pradhana. That is the argument that is going forward. So we'll take up that portion next class. We'll conclude now. If you want anything to ask, you are most welcome. Otherwise, we'll conclude. And we'll have the same session next week. Okay. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.